Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Michael Thompson. Over the last couple of years, we've spoken to a number of Australian breweries, and they often have something in common. Craft beer seems to be such an incredible growth market, and there are so many breweries operating alongside a few big players that they really need to do something special to set themselves apart. And our guest today is part of an international success story. Brewdog was founded in Scotland back in 2007, and when we're talking about innovation, it's a bit of a standout. It's the world's first carbon negative brewery. Brewdog came to Australia in 2019 and chose Brisbane for its local brewery and tap room. And that's really then how this conversation came about. The Brisbane Economic Development Agency is a supporter of Fear and Greed. And so what better way to find out why Brisbane is so appealing to business than to speak to an international company that decided to set up shop there. Plus, I get to talk about beer. Calvin McDonald is the head of Australian operations at Brewdog and my guest this morning. Calvin, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thanks very much for having me. Great to be here.
Now, Brewdog is, it really is a terrific story because craft beer has kind of exploded in the last decade or so. I know it's been around for a lot longer than that, but really in the last kind of 10 or 12 years, it seems like there's just been hundreds of kind of microbreweries that have sprung up, but very few of them seem to get to that point of expanding internationally. So how did Brewdog come about, and then how did it actually break through?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, so I've worked for Brewdog personally for 10 years. So I've seen the whole evolution of the company from a real kind of plucky outsider to, as you say, one of the world leaders in craft beer. I think one of the main kind of obstacles in craft beer is that it was historically seen as such a niche industry. And really, I think when you are in a niche industry, there's almost a fear to get to a certain point of becoming mainstream. But in 10 years I've worked for us, we've gone from craft beer being, a complete outlier. The consumer would really, really have to search for it and proactively seek it out, to now there's not a bar in Australia really that doesn't have something that at least identifies as a craft beer. So it's been amazing to see the growth of the industry. And yeah, as a Brewdog lifer, so to speak, it's been great to see us go from a small brewery in Scotland to the world leader here and be part of that story over in Brisbane. So I moved over to Brisbane in 2019. We'd actually had plans for brewing in Australia for quite a while, a few years before that. And really, it came down to one thing. We're a brewery and we live and die by what's in our glass, and we need the beer to be in as good condition as possible. So shipping it from Scotland to Australia, which we had done for the better part of 10 years, it was great, and it allowed us to build a small but loyal following here in Australia. But ultimately, the beer wasn't getting to Perth or Brisbane or Sydney in great nick. So we decided that the best way to facilitate that was to just build a brewery ourselves and set up shop here in Australia. And that's how Brisbane came to be our point of distribution across Australia, because that's where we set up our brewery and elected to brew all our beer for Australia.
I'll get to the freshness of it, because I didn't realize that was such a big element of kind of the decision-making process in terms of kind of where you situate a brewery, and also then that would obviously inform kind of your export plans, where in the world you are taking the beer to and where it's coming from. But just to go back briefly onto kind of why there's been such an explosion in craft beer in the last decade, what's changed? Is it something to do with the customers? Is the craft beer clientele kind of different to, say, your more traditional beers? Is it because there seems to be so many different beers on offer that there is kind of something for men and something for women, something for young and old people? There's kind of something for everyone?
Yeah, I think the main driver has been consumer education. So it's always been a key part of what we do is that it's one thing to come in and have a great craft beer, but we really want to educate people about why craft beer is the way it is, why the flavors are much more expansive than your mainstream beer market, and why really that's a good thing. And I think 10 years ago, it was much more the accepted norm that you had the 3 or 4 mass-made market leaders, and that was your lot, essentially. Whereas now in Brisbane, I think there's about 24, 25 absolute top-class craft breweries, and all of them have their own merits. So now if you're coming through the ranks and you're a youngster turning 18 and starting to get into the beer industry, it's no longer the norm that you just have to drink one of the 3 mass-made lagers. It's much more of an accepted situation that there is a world of flavour out there for you to go and discover and enjoy. So really, I think just that availability of another option has perpetuated the market and allowed other plucky upstart breweries to have a look at the market and see that there is a space for that smaller competitor.
And the zero and low alcohol beer and everything kind of coming through, it seems like that's been one of the big trends of the last kind of 2 or 3 years. And I know you're kind of busy in that space too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing a much more conscientious marketplace now. The stats about, especially the younger demographic, choosing a zero alcohol option and in some cases a completely teetotal lifestyle is really, really surprising. I'm not sure if that's just because I come from Scotland, but it's been really, really reassuring that the alcohol-free options have not just been a flash in the pan. And we've had to actually buy a pasteurizer for the brewery up in Brisbane so that we can make the best alcohol-free beers that we can. So yeah, we pride ourselves on all of our beers being vegan, but without an alcohol-free sphere, we've had to innovate a little bit, and we actually use a little bit of lactose in that, which unfortunately means they're not vegan, but it does mean that we, when we pasteurize them, they've got a pretty stable shelf life. So it's amazing to see that the demand for alcohol-free beers is still driving innovation in the industry like that.
Okay, stay with me, Calvin. We'll be back in a moment. My guest this morning is Calvin McDonald, Head of Australian Operations at Brewdog. I mentioned in the intro that Brewdog's the world's first carbon negative brewery. So not just carbon neutral, we've actually gone one step further and become carbon negative. What's that actually mean?
So essentially we offset more carbon than we put into the atmosphere, I suppose, as a result of our brewing processes, as a result of our hospitality businesses, and actually for our employees as well. Every single Brewdog employee can fill in a survey that they update every year, which estimates their carbon output. And to make sure that we account for that, we actually have a forest in Scotland. We've called it the Lost Forest after one of our lagers. But yeah, we're currently in the midst of a reforestation project, over 100 acres there. And yeah, the net carbon offset from what's in the atmosphere over there in Scotland will be enough to account for all the carbon that we unfortunately do have to put in across the world. Obviously, it's our intention that we don't really want to offset. We'd just like to live a sustainable carbon life as a business. But we think that taking the carbon back out of the atmosphere is a good way to go about that.
All right. Now, you talked about the freshness of beer and kind of the fact that I didn't realise that you were actually kind of shipping it from Scotland to Australia for so long before deciding to set up here. What was it then about Brisbane that really kind of drew you to there? Because you actually mentioned that there's 24 or 25 craft brewers all operating. It sounds like it's got a pretty kind of vibrant scene, but surely it would get a bit competitive, wouldn't it?
As any expanding business internationally, you want to be part of a scene that exists. Back 15 years ago in Scotland, we kind of had to be one of a couple of breweries that really started and invigorated that scene, which is great. But at the stage we're in as a business, we kind of don't want to go and reinvent the wheel. We want to go and be part of something. So when we had a look across Australia, yeah, the Brisbane beer scene is absolutely top notch. We were excited to go and be a part of it. But also we did feel that we do something slightly different to a lot of the breweries in Brisbane. So we thought that we could go in and help to take on some of those bigger breweries, the more established kind of macro breweries, with our international punching power, so to speak. In the taproom in Brisbane, up in Murray, we showcase 6 to 8 local craft beers at any given time. So I think that's something that allowed us to ingratiate with the local market. Really, we want to be given a leg up to those local breweries, not to compete with them. So we were really confident that Brisbane was the place for us to do that. And looking forward, as we grow, I mean, in the scheme of world breweries, Brewdog in Australia is still really pretty tiny. But we are an ambitious company. We've never made a secret of that. And as we look at growing the business over the next 5 to 10 years, just the location of Brisbane gives us an amazing starting point for some of our plans over the next few years.
And so I assume part of that would probably be kind of domestic expansion, but also in terms of exporting, because Brisbane has such good access to some of the main export markets, I imagine. Does it make a difference, say, for example, if you're exporting beer from Scotland to Japan or Scotland to South Korea, suddenly then going from Brisbane to Japan or Brisbane to South Korea, it would improve the product, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely that. And especially with the hoppy beers that we make, the fresher the better. So any day that we can take off the process going from brewery to glass is in our interests. So when you take Brisbane as the example we're talking about here, I actually look after our hospitality operations in Asia as well. So there's a bar in Tokyo and a bar in Shanghai that both report into me. And the plan is in the long term that we start shipping beers directly from from Brisbane to those markets. Just now, as I say, we're a small operation. We don't have the economies of scale to make that economically viable for now. But for us, opening in Brisbane is about future-proofing. That means that when those export markets do open up to us, we're in a great situation to take advantage of them straight away. And yeah, those number of days on the water from Brisbane to Tokyo are going to significantly improve the quality of the product as opposed to coming from Scotland.
You mentioned that when you came to Australia, it was in 2019. I think it was about November of 2019, which in terms, I suppose, of timing, isn't probably the greatest, being 4 months out from a global pandemic, setting up a new outpost in Australia 4 months out from lockdowns. How did you guys fare during lockdowns? And I suppose it actually hasn't even kind of finished. Have you had kind of the impacts of supply chain challenges, which have kind of been sweeping right through all industries across all sectors across all countries?
We actually did relatively well throughout the initial lockdowns because we were still such a fledgling business. It meant that when everyone else was looking to streamline and improve efficiencies of operations, we quite honestly hadn't even got to that point yet. We were still a super tiny team. There was only about 3 of us who worked for Brewdog in Australia outside of the hospitality business. So it meant that we were able to be pretty lean throughout that time. It could have gone better for us. For example, our canning line was being commissioned in January 2020. We had our engineers over from China who were doing a great job. We were about a week away from being able to get beer into cans when they went home for Chinese New Year, and the rest is history. So it meant that we actually had a great business and a great brand without a product through a lot of lockdown. So yeah, as you say, it was not perhaps the ideal time to start internationally, but I think we managed to be resilient after that because, as I say, we were such a small team to start with. But yeah, the supply chain challenges are hitting us like everyone else. But at the same time, we managed to source pretty much all of our malt from a local maltings called Barrett Burston, which you can actually see over the Brisbane River from the brewery. So by managing to keep things local, it improves our ability to, it's such a COVID buzzword, but to pivot to new products and products that are easier for us to obtain. And yeah, if we can use ingredients as local as possible, it keeps our carbon footprint down as well. So as a result of that, we've been able to be pretty resilient in the face of some of those supply chain challenges.
All right, last question. I wanted just to look a fair way into the future. And with your tap room, are you already taking bookings for July and August of 2032? When Brisbane is going to host the Olympics, it is going to be a cracking time to be operating in Brisbane. Yeah,
we're very, very excited. And it's so amazing for us to have this kind of 10-year lead up towards what will be an absolutely amazing couple of months and a huge Olympics. It means that we can have the confidence in everything that we do, that Brisbane is a city really on the rise. It's amazing to be part of discussions within the local business community as well about ways that we can mobilise and team together and really make sure that the Brisbane 2032 Olympics is being used for the common good, both for Brisbane business and for the city as well. But given the amount of guys from the UK Brewdog team that have already put in a reservation for Brisbane in 2032, I'm not sure if we'll be able to facilitate too many more spaces. The whole world it's amazing to have the whole world looking at Brisbane now, and yeah, it's a really, really exciting time to be here. We couldn't have timed it better, really. I'm very excited.
Suddenly you find yourself getting a lot of friends kind of just popping up, wanting to pop over and visit you.
Yeah, amazing how that happens, isn't it? But I mean, we're really excited to be able to show everyone Brisbane. I think it's a city that when you arrive here, and especially internationally, perhaps, and historically, it's not had that reputation that maybe your Sydneys or your Melbournes have. So, we're just excited to start, now that borders are open again, start welcoming more people internationally to Brisbane, showing them around and leaving them with an absolutely amazing perception of Brisbane as a fast-growing, forward-looking city. And that's the common consensus amongst everyone who's managed to get out here. So we're looking forward to that continuing right up to 2032.
Fantastic. Calvin, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That was Calvin McDonald, Head of Australian Operations at Brewdog, a business that is growing with the support of the Brisbane Economic Development Agency, which sponsors this podcast. Visit choosebrisbane.com.au. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson. Enjoy your day.